Okay. Hi, this is Rennie Gabriel. I'm with Ross, whose last name it's hard for me to pronounce.
Ross Budrakey.
Budrakey, okay, that's how you do it. And the purpose of this video is to talk about the reality in buying tax liens or tax deeds, because there's tremendous amount of misunderstandings out there, and I want to clear that up. People think they can sit at home, get a list of what's available for sale, make bids, buy property, make interest, sell property without ever leaving their house. And there are all sorts of programs that sell that, and Ross buys these. He understands what's really involved. And so Ross, let me have you clear up some of the misconceptions.
Sure. Well, let me start first of all by establishing why I can talk about this. I've been investing in real estate for about 15 years, and it was about 3 years ago that I learned what a tax lien was. And I took some classes, and I was very intrigued, and I wanted to do more. I hired coaches, and ultimately I got to the point where I started my own company, took over my own retirement account, and then I was on the road with one of the firms that teaches this for several months, mentoring their students. So typically when I introduce people to tax lien certificate investing, what I'll share with them is if you own a piece of property, you have to pay property tax on it, and that property tax goes to the county where the property is located, and the county will use that money for schools and roads and parks and police and firemen. And the fact of the matter is, some people don't pay their taxes. They're sick, they're broke, they're dead, or whatever their circumstance is, but the fact is some people don't pay their taxes.
Or they could lose their job or whatever.
Yeah, there's a number of circumstances. To the point where the counties need to have a procedure for collecting delinquent property taxes. The state legislator that makes the laws for the state makes the laws that the counties need to follow for collecting delinquent property taxes.
And these are different from state to state, correct?
They are different from state to state. They're generally going to be a tax lien or a tax deed. It's the same process. It's just where in that process can an investor like you or myself get involved. About half the states are tax lien states, and about half the states are tax deed states. So let me explain the difference. In a tax lien state, if the property owner is delinquent on their property taxes, the county will contact the property owner, or attempt to, and say, hey, you're delinquent on your property taxes. If they still don't respond, they'll contact any other lien holder of record, a bank that has a mortgage, a mechanic that's put a lien on the house or the pool or the roof or the work they've done, and say, hey, lien holder of record, you may want to pay the back taxes on this property to secure the asset that's your collateral on the money that's owed to you. And often they do. But sometimes they don't, and then what the county will do is they'll advertise in a legal newspaper through public outcry a tax lien that's available. It's typically a parcel number and a legal description that includes a book number and a page number. It doesn't tell you 123 Main Street, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1975. It's going to give you a basic legal description which you need to decipher into a property address, where you can then go through the discovery phase of figuring out the value of the asset that ultimately back your investment if you're a successful bidder.
So that map and page is information that you end up having to research somewhere else to find out what a physical address is.
That's correct. In fact, most of tax lien investing is research. First and foremost, you need to know the rules of the game. What's the law of the state, and then how does that county interpret the law? Two counties right next to each other have the same rules, but it's amazingly how different the game is played. Do you need to register before the auction? Do you need to make a deposit before the auction? Do you need to register with an auction house other than the county? Do you need to make a deposit with them? Is the county online, or is it on the courthouse steps? And so you need to know that just because you're in one state, not all counties are going to interpret the rules the same way. So know the rules of the state and know the rules of the county, how they interpret them, first and foremost. And then most importantly, the key is the research. You need to do the research. In a tax lien state, if the property, we'll use a $200,000 home, owes $5,000 in property taxes, and the owner hasn't responded, maybe they've passed away or they're incapacitated, and the mortgage holder, perhaps it was a bank that went under, or is just not interested in acquiring, not interested in paying out more money to acquire another piece of real estate, they'll advertise the sale, and we'll see it in a legal section of a newspaper typically. and then we'll go through that legal description and find the property address, and then determine the fair market value of that asset as it stands.
So yeah, as an example, the house could be a wreck. It could be ready to fall down. You have no idea until you do some more research.
Right, and you have to be careful, because what you see online is often a lot nicer than what you see when you actually go there. The images on Google Maps and such are typically 9 months old or older. You know, a lot can happen to a property in 9 months. The back of it could have burned off. There could be, you know, drug use or vandalism or a lot of things that could make that property undesirable. So you can do a lot of research online, but you're absolutely not going to make an investment into a tax lien without eyeing the property, either yourself or someone you trust, and within a day or two of the auction, because something can happen. If someone, a week before the auction, if you looked at the house and it looks great, but their property owner is upset and they burn it down or something, it's buyer beware. So you really need to, the key to the whole vehicle is doing the research.
I guess the other possibility is that a week before the auction, you may have looked at it and it looks terrific, and then the next day the homeowner ends up paying the back taxes, finds the money somehow, borrows it from someone, and then it doesn't end up going to auction.
Yeah, and that's a great point. When I first got involved in this, when we got the lists, we were diving down and doing deep level of research on all the available targets, as we call them, parcels that we were interested in. And only to find out that after doing all that work, many of these redeemed, you know, prior to the auction, and we could have saved ourselves a lot of time or effort. So now what we do, when that list comes out, typically 4 weeks before the auction, we'll go through it and we'll identify raw land, single-family residence, commercial properties, and just keep an eye on what's there and identify what we'd be interested in, and eliminate what we're not, to get a shorter list. And then as the weeks tick by, as we get closer to the auction, that list will get shorter and shorter as property owners will redeem and protect their houses. And a lot of action happens the day before the auction. A bank, if it has an interest, will typically wait to the last minute before they pay, because they'll hope the property owner will pay. And so it's, we have to, at some point you have to dig down and do deeper levels of research. Typically we're less than a week away from the auction when we decide we're going to look at the properties, we're going to get ideas from contractors and realtors, what's it going to take to put this into a rentable or sellable condition, whatever our exit strategy tends to be. And then we can formulate our strategies. Essentially, once we know the value of the asset, we can determine what our exit strategy would be, and then once we have an exit strategy, we can come up with our bidding strategy.
So this sounds so completely different than what a lot of people are led to believe, in that, let's say they see someone owes back property taxes for $5,000 and they submit a bid of $5,000, thinking, number one, that they'll get it for whatever the bid is, number two, that now they have a piece of paper that entitles them to own the house, not even realizing what they're actually buying is like a trust deed almost, if I were to create a comparison, where if the person doesn't make the payments on their trust deed, then you end up having to go through a process to foreclose and take over the asset. And it sounds very similar with the tax lien. In other words, you bought it, you own it, you have an interest in it, but you've actually kind of have an interest in a physical asset. This is not just trading paper. And along with having that physical asset, you have to have it in a condition you can do something with it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. A lot of people are buying tax liens and thinking, hey, I'm going to get 16%, I'm going to get 18%, I'm going to get 24%, that's the law. Well, if the property doesn't have any real value, nobody's going to redeem you and pay your money back plus the interest, because the value's not there. And I've met many people that have bought tax liens in Arizona hoping to get the high rate of interest, and only at the end of the redemption period they haven't been redeemed, to find that there's no value in the asset.
The asset that was the collateral.
And so if you don't know basically the asset that's going to back up your bid, you need to know, if you were to acquire that asset for that you could make a profit if you acquired the asset, because either you're going to get the high rate of interest on your tax lien certificate during the redemption period, or you'll have the right to take the property. And you need to know that taking the property, there's a cost. The deed application fee could be $1,000 or more. You're going to need to get insurance. You're going to need to put the power on, get the water on if there's rehab necessary. There'll be some costs. When you take the tax lien and they deed the property to you, you need to have that deed cleared. You need to have an attorney. It's typically $2,500 or $3,500 to get that decloud the title, and to make it marketable. There'll be a cost associated with above and beyond the purchase of the lien. If you're not redeemed, when you take that property, there are costs that you need to factor in. The realtor cost, the rehab cost. If you're using other people's money, there's a cost on the private money. All that needs to be factored in. Oh, by the way, we like to make a profit, so you want to calculate your profit in there also. And then once you have your exit figured out, you can then determine your maximum bid. If you happen to get successful at the auction and acquire something for less than your maximum bid, you might have more options on your exit. So you can literally get, people advertise you can get properties for pennies on the dollar. You can.
But you may not want them.
Well, if you've done your homework right, if you're working with me and I'm advising you, I do more research on potential tax lien certificate purchases than I did on the home I live in, because I now know. But it's what's protecting your investment, and you have to do your diligence. If the rule is, if you're not looking at the you're not eyeing it, you're not buying it, you really need to know what's there backing your investment.
You were talking about something earlier, which was there's half the states are tax liens, half the states are tax deeds. Is California a tax deed state, and how does that differ?
That's right. California is a tax deed state, and basically how it works, just like a tax lien certificate holder will have a redemption period, anywhere from 6 months to 3 years typically, where they hold it for that period of time. At the end of that period of time, if they haven't been redeemed, got their money back plus the rate of interest guaranteed by law, they have a right to acquire the property free and clear. Liens and encumbrances will be removed. In most states, all of them, and you have to check the rules of the states. IRS may survive in California, but it won't in Georgia. In a tax deed state, it's the same process, with the only exception is the county won't offer investors like you and me an opportunity to buy the tax lien. But the county still has a redemption period, and they're still going to get a high rate of interest on the delinquent taxes. And at the end of the redemption period, if the county hasn't been redeemed by the property owner or a lien holder of record, then the county can foreclose on any interested party's right to redeem by serving notice, just like we would as a lien certificate holder. And then the county takes possession of the deed.
So in a tax deed state, the county takes possession of the property, and they're the ones who'll get any interest if it's redeemed, as opposed to a tax lien state where an investor can step in and be the owner of that tax.
Right. In a tax lien state, the county gets its money up front when the tax lien certificate investor pays the county.
Got it.
In a tax deed state, the county isn't seeing that revenue now, but they are entitled to the high rate of interest as opposed to passing it on to an investor. But just like an investor, at the end of the redemption period, if the county hasn't been redeemed, they foreclose on their right to redeem and they take the property. But the county doesn't want the property. They want the tax revenue.
Exactly.
And so they're going to turn around and offer the tax deed for sale, and what's owed in back taxes plus penalties and interest plus the cost to advertise the sale will be the opening bid at the deed sale. And when you're the high bidder at a deed sale, congratulations, it's your property.
Yes, but it's also, you've got the same situation where you want to be sure you bought a property that is worth buying, that you can sell, depending on how much work it'll take, or if you're going to rent it out, but it's the same evaluation you need to do on the property in either case, correct?
That's exactly right. The research preparing for a tax lien or for a tax deed is essentially the same. There's a little more risk with a tax deed because it's immediate. But the county will offer that tax deed, and just to be clear, you don't take possession of that until they deliver it to you. So it could take 4 weeks or so for them, if you're the high bidder, for them to deliver the deed to you, and then you have access to the property.
Okay, all right. Any other closing remarks? I mean, we found out about the difference between tax lien state, tax deed state. The rules from one county to the next in the same state could be vastly different. That you're not just buying paper, but you actually will end up with a physical asset if you actually acquire it and it's not redeemed. And what's ending up being sold is not the tax lien or the tax deed. What ends up being sold is the hard asset real estate.
That is a way to look at it, yeah. When you're buying a tax lien, there's a very high % chance that you'll get redeemed and you'll get your money back plus the rate of interest.
Okay, what's the odds on that? I mean, is it like 60%, 70% of the time what you bought will be redeemed?
83.2% of statistics are made up on the spot. So what you hear said.
In your experience.
Yeah, I'm going to qualify my experience because in a tax lien, it's about a 90% chance you're going to get redeemed, about a 10% chance you'll get the home, so they say. In a tax deed, you're going to get the home,
yes,
or the property, whatever that is. States like Georgia and Texas and a few others are actually called redeemable deed states, and they work a lot like a tax lien. But in Texas, for example, if you buy a redeemable deed that pays 25% interest and the redemption period is 6 months, during that 6-month redemption period, you can rent the home and collect rents, and you can fix up that property and be entitled to a rate of return on your purchase plus your rehab costs, which is really nice. So it acts very much like a tax lien, except for you have some opportunities with the property.
Yeah. In
my experience in Georgia, where I've done most of my investing, about 2/3 of the time when I buy a redeemable deed with a 12-month redemption period that pays me a guaranteed 20% penalty. That means if they redeem a day or a month later, it's my money back plus 20%.
Oh, wow.
About 2/3 of the time, I'm taking the property in Georgia. And so I like, if a $200,000 house and I'm the high bidder at $100,000, I'm going to get $120,000 back any day in the next 12 months. At the end of 12 months, if I haven't been redeemed, I can foreclose on any interested party's right to redeem by advertising in a legal newspaper and serving certified mail.
Going through a process.
The same process the county goes to advertise the sale will do and say, hey, lien holders, if you have any interest in redeeming this, you have another 30 days, and at that point it's 30% in Georgia, and at the end of that process, they lose their right to redeem their property. You go back to the county with your redeemable deed and proof of advertisement and proof of service, and they'll transfer the deed to your name, and you will hire an attorney, decloud it, start the rehab, and congratulations, you just bought a property, hopefully for half-price service.
Yeah. So in other words, in 2/3 of the cases, approximately, you end up with an asset in Georgia, and 1/3 of the time they do get redeemed, and you get your interest.
Right. And often when they get redeemed, in my experience, it's in the first month. It just slips someone's mind. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this. What's it going to take to redeem? You tell them what it's going to take. If it's a $100,000 investment, it's $120,000.
Well, yeah, let me ask this too, because you're talking about a bid price. So let's say the property taxes are behind by $100,000. Several people are bidding for it. You end up buying it for $100. Is what the person has to redeem it for now $100 plus interest, or was it the original 20?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, it's likely going to be. I know in Georgia, if the property taxes owed are $2,000 to $10,000, it's probably a single-family residence in the ballpark of $75,000 to $250,000. If it's just a couple $100, it may be a piece of raw land. If it's several $100,000, it could be a commercial building. But you can tell by the minimum bid most times. Someone could have short paid their taxes on something, and it could be a low dollar amount to a high value asset. But if the property owner owed $5,000 on a $200,000 house, and I'm the high bidder at $100,000, they need to pay the $100,000 plus 20%. Now here's the deal: the county was owed $5,000.
Yes.
I paid the county $100,000.
Right.
The county's flush $95,000. Those are excess funds.
Right.
Now the property owner is entitled to the excess funds. But if they can't collect the excess funds if there's other liens on there without getting permission of the other liens. You'll need to check each county and each state to make sure you know that process. In some states, if the minimum bid is $5,000 and someone paid $100,000, the property owner is only going to pay interest on what they owed in taxes. That's not the case in Georgia. Georgia is the whole amount. So if you owed $5,000, you could have paid $5,000 to the county, you would have been okay, but you didn't, and an investor comes in and pays $100,000. Now you've got to pay the investor the $120,000 to get your home back, but you can claim the $95,000 in excess funds. But what it did, it cost you $25,000 then instead of $5,000.
Yes. So in essence, if you don't redeem it, I guess what I'm getting at is, if they didn't have the money to redeem it at $5,000, it doesn't sound like it's going to be that likely they'll have the money to redeem it when they have to come up with $25,000.
That's correct. It's highly unlikely. But
Yeah.
there are some circumstances. A big conglomerate that owns a lot of these things, they recognize, hey, it's going to cost me the same at the first day as it is on the 365th day. They're going to wait the 365 days and redeem the last possible minute, saying, hey, maybe they're making better than 20% on their money somewhere else.
Yes.
There was a story that Apple lost one of their stores for failure to pay property taxes.
That sounds familiar.
And it's, Apple, they're not broke, but it does happen that in the law.
The paperwork gets lost. Paperwork gets lost somewhere.
Yeah. So it's a neat process. Now, one thing I'd like to tell anyone watching this video: a lot of people are out there selling information on this, and the introduction to this is pretty easy to understand. Doing it takes quite a bit of work, and through my experience over the last several years, I recognized, and being on the road with companies that teach this and having friends that teach this to students, is that a lot of people pay money above and beyond the introduction to this to sit in a classroom and learn how to do it.
The reason you and I are getting together is because I attended an introductory program where they were selling a $3,000 course to learn how to buy tax liens and tax deeds, and they were going to be providing software, and they're going to be providing lists, and they're going to be providing the education and all this information. And I thought to myself, I don't know, this just feels bogus to me, that I'll get an education over a day or two or whatever the program was, and then I'll be able to sit at home and collect 15 and 20% on my investments. It just didn't seem real to me, and so I made some phone calls, and that's how you and I got in touch.
Okay, so let me say something on that. I was someone who paid $3,000 for an introductory course, and I'm having success.
Yes, but you're putting it to use far differently than it is being sold.
Right, and so I want to say is that I am not the typical student in one of these classes, having been in dozens and dozens of these classes over years, supporting them, coaching and mentoring students in that. I recognize that people will pay for higher level classes, and then a lot of them will never buy a tax lien. And they realize that there's fear, there's the unknown, there's all the research that needs to be done. And I really think I wouldn't advise, typically if you learn what a tax lien is and you have an interest in pursuing it, you can either actively do it yourself or passively do it by investing with a firm that invests in tax liens, like my firm. And most active people, if someone wanted to actively do it, my recommendation would be partner with someone who's actively doing it and having success. And don't go sit through a 3-day classroom and think that you're going to do it unless they're going to take you to the county, hold your hand through the whole process, register you. They'll pull the list with you, they'll research the list with you, they'll look at the properties with you, they'll go to the county, register with you, stand next to you and help you through the bidding process, and if you're successful at that, walk you through the process. Once you get this, there's dates you need to remember. Hey, I have to foreclose on a right to redeem if I don't get this, and what's that process? You'll need to have a coach or mentor that knows what they're doing in that particular market. That's my advice. Hire a coach or take one of those mastery classes where they're actually at the county. You're going to do all the work and actually go to the county and take a swing with a seasoned vet next to you.
Well, I can't imagine that a process like that, which would be a lot closer to assuring someone's success, would be $3,000.
No, those are typically more. I know I have a friend named Mike Wolf up in Canada who he's an expert in Harris County, Texas, which is a great market. And I took his class last July. Fantastic. I met his whole team. I can now invest in Texas redeemable deeds without having to go. I know the process. I'm familiar with it, and I'm very confident this. That's an intimidating place. They have 8 auctions going simultaneously, and Mike offers a class where you basically show up on a Saturday night. Sunday you're pulling lists, you're meeting the team. Monday you're out looking at the properties. You're driving around. Harris County's huge, by the way. It'll take you 12, 13 hours to go look at properties in that county. And then the next day, it's usually a small group, a half dozen or so, who go to the county, register for the auctions, and his people will help you place your bids and have success. And the beautiful thing there is, at 25%, if you successfully put $50,000 to work, you're going to make $12,500. And these courses are typically half of that. So one successful bid, it pays you back.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you, Ross. This is the information I wanted. I'll turn this back